Do what feels good is good. What does it matter if people think it's immoral? My name is Amy, and I am a 22-year-old woman. I am an only child raised only by my mother, Emma, who had separated from my father when I was barely 5 years old. I always admired my mother because for me, she was like a superhero who was capable of doing anything for me. So when Dave came into our lives about 6 years ago, I felt like my world suddenly collapsed. First, my mom's attention was no longer focused on me, so I had to learn to share it with my new stepfather. Second, having a man in the house changed the privacy that my mother and I had, since I had to behave more modestly and not let my body be seen. But to be honest, that all changed when I accidentally saw them doing things in their room. Dave was a younger man than my mother, approximately 40 years old, while she was already in her 50s. His body was well preserved. So at 18 years old, I found myself frequently admiring his physique, which I found attractive. However, seeing him in his birthday suit was like a dream. At that time, I understood very well how relationships worked. But I had never put into practice what I saw on the internet. At that time, I had never had a boyfriend or anything like that. So that was my first door to experimenting. And far from considering it grotesque or traumatic, I found it attractive and something I definitely wanted to try. My unexplored body didn't quite understand the sensations that seemed to cloud my mind. But with each touch of my fingertips, it was like feeling a piece of heaven in my mouth. My breathing was labored as my head replayed the images I managed to get from spying on my mother and stepfather, feeling my center explode after my innocent play. That without a doubt was what made me fully accept Dave into our little family. My mother was pleased with the idea of her little daughter taking in the one she said was the love of her life. I could only smile when I saw my mother happy while deep down, I just wanted to continue seeing what made me let my imagination fly. The years passed, and after turning 20, I began to have several partners. They were all different men with different types of lives, who I led into the house to try to achieve that same result. At first, none of them could make me feel the same. But when I was caught doing it by Dave, I knew what I had to do. So as if it were some kind of routine, I would leave my door open while I did it with my partner, all in the hope that my stepfather would see what he had indirectly taught me. However, the only thing I had gotten from him was a lecture about how I shouldn't bring my boyfriends home, much less leave the door open when doing things with them. Besides, he told me, don't bring guys who can't afford a hotel room. Do you think they are the kind of men your mother would want you to spend the rest of your life with? I denied letting fake tears fall on my face, then be more responsible. Amy, my stepfather had always been a responsible man, very dedicated to my mother and the home we had built. So I didn't expect a different reaction. However, I wanted to get Dave's attention, and I was frustrated that I couldn't. But who knew that opportunity would come in the most unexpected way? That night before going to sleep, I went down to the kitchen for a midnight snack. There was Dave, who seemed to be talking on the phone. Something that didn't seem strange to me, since he was such a sociable person that he could spend hours and hours on the phone. But that day was different. The way he spoke reminded me of the tone of voice he used with me. The complicity he seemed to have with that person was so great that I decided not to make noise and listen carefully. You know that, right? You know, you can't call earlier. After that, a short chuckle came out of Dave's mouth. Hush, love, you will make me laugh out loud. At that moment, I froze and tried to breathe deeply so as not to jump to conclusions. What are you saying? Emma isn't like that, said my stepfather. My breathing stopped for a moment as I felt my heart beating wildly in my chest. It can't be, I thought at that moment. She wouldn't want her dad back, Dave murmured. Don't you know how much she loves me? A gasp escaped my mouth, making me run as quickly as possible to my room. There I tried to control my breathing after climbing the stairs of our house, still turning the matter over in my head. My stepfather cheated on my mom while she supposed that love of his life was sleeping. That revelation made my perspective have completely changed, because seeing him act affectionately and in love with Emma while knowing that he was cheating on her made my stomach turn. At the time, I thought my mom didn't deserve that. After giving Dave a chance, from the way they spoke so casually, it was evident that this was not the first time they had done so, nor that the topics were the most innocent in the world. There were several days in which I tried to weigh my surprise and disappointment to finally resolve that in the end, I didn't care what happened. I would be on my mother's side. I knew I couldn't let me spend her life on a man who didn't value her. So I decided to avenge her only in a more particular way than anyone would have imagined. It was Friday, and my mom had announced that she would be late for a work dinner. That was my golden opportunity to show my cards. So I reviewed the material I had on my phone one last time and headed to both of our bedrooms where my stepfather was typing on a computer. Dave, I sat at the door of his room. Without waiting much, he turned his chair and greeted me. There I could see his eyes widen as they roamed over my body, all while his Adam's apple was more visible. I knew that my outfit with a short skirt and a t-shirt that exposed my abdomen was the best one to achieve my goal. Although Dave had always shown himself to be a serious and respectful person, after knowing his secret, it was easier to understand that he would fall for the charms of anyone who appeared provocative. "Is something wrong?" he told me with his usual seriousness. I bit my lower lip, running my hands over my abdomen in imitation of nervousness. "I have something to tell you." "What happened? Is it about your mom?" I walked into the room shaking my head. "It's about you." When he was a step away from his chair, I took my cell phone off my hip and held it up to his eye level. The moment the video played, colors rushed to Dave's face as he tried to get words out of his mouth without success. The video was a full recording of a very private phone session my stepfather had had with his lover, one that was recorded entirely on my phone, and which had undoubtedly served as guiding material for my own exploration. Amy, what is that?" he said, stuttering. "Well, why do you have that?" "I know your little secret," I said, smiling back. "Your mother." "My mother doesn't know anything," I said, pulling out the cell phone and pausing the video. "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" I asked back rhetorically, because I know it would affect her very much to know the truth. There were several seconds of silence where the only thing we could hear were our breathing. His eyes stared at me while mine focused on memorizing every part of him. This wasn't Dave, my perfect stepdad. He was the man whose curtain had fallen and had to try to put it back up, or his theater would end in that instant. "You are not sincere. You know me?" "Well," I replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What do you want?" he said bluntly. "I want," I said, and then let out a sigh and fell back onto the bed. "Let you see me." "Just look at me," I said, "and I will delete the video." At that moment, the zipper of my skirt was sliding slowly as I skillfully lowered it down my legs. I felt my heart pounding as I watched Dave's lips open wide while his cheeks blushed. It was what I had always wanted, and I had it there. I stuck 2 fingers into my mouth, moistening my fingertips under his watchful gaze. Then those same ones descended, reaching the place where I wanted them, starting with gentle circular movements that brought some words out of my mouth. "Are you crazy?" he exclaimed. I laughed without stopping my hand while my gaze continued fixed on his. Although he seemed shocked, I could tell from his pupils that he liked what he was seeing. This motivated me to continue with what I was doing, accelerating my circles and getting closer to that cloud of sensations that was beginning to cover me. "You're doing it wrong," he said suddenly, taking my hand just at the moment when I knew I might explode. I gasped in surprise when I noticed his hand in that place. The warmth Dave gave me with his fingers was something none of my ex-boyfriends had been able to provide. His skill seemed to be otherworldly, for it wasn't long before my legs began to tremble, and my mind went blank as waves of sensations intoxicated my body. I thought that was enough. But Dave took me in his arms and carried me to the center of the bed. "If you want to do something, you must do it." "Well," he told me. At that moment, his mouth merged with mine and a hungry wild kiss, all while one of his hands held my jaw tightly. The pressure I was applying hurt a little, but I didn't allow myself to complain because I was getting more than I wanted at the beginning. It wasn't long before he was attached to me, as we moved at a furious pace. In that place, in the room I shared with my mother, I felt like I was coming out of my body with everything Dave did to me. While the most incoherent words of all came out of my mouth. It was crazy to think about it, but what many tried for several months my stepfather had achieved in just one night. When we finished, he demanded that I delete the video I had recorded, since he had already fulfilled his part of a deal that we had not signed. I smiled, deleting the video that I had shown him, even though he didn't know that it was one of many that I had managed to obtain after spying on him to find out the truth. Those videos were my insurance to get what I wanted, and it was only natural to delete them after fulfilling the fantasy I had had for years. However, after spending the night with Dave, I had become a little miserly about what I wanted from him. That's why even though I had promised him I would return to his room during the nights when we were alone to show him the videos that could end his relationship with Emma. His face seemed serious as usual, but after several occasions, I managed to see behind that facade and see him enjoying the little game we had where he pretended to be offended and worried. I thought I was the one with the power, but in the end, my stepfather showed me that he was the master behind the plan. And what do you think of all this? I know that what I did was not right, but I let myself be carried away by what I felt at all times. And maybe it got out of hand. I hope you don't judge me too much for my impulses. If you want more confessions like this, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and until next time.